we doing?
I think what we're doing is getting a few questions here on the show. Of course, we have this review coming. We'll get more questions later on, but a popular topic that many people have sent in a question about. I don't know if this video just emerged or if it was just recently noticed or if it's just going around now, but we've received many emails about a video from the WWF, now WWE, 1994, shortly before WrestleMania 10 at Madison Square Garden, where you're out there and Lex Luger is introduced as the WWF champion, and he comes out wearing the belt. Now, I remember this because in the sheets, and I was getting the Torch at the time and the Observer at the time, the Torch had a photo of it, the Observer wrote about it. The presumption was this was being shot so that they had the footage ready to go after WrestleMania 10 when Lex Luger would, rumor has it, win the World Heavyweight Championship, and they would have the footage already. They would have the new open of the show, Luger in the ring with the belt. Of course, that did not happen. What did happen? What was the reason behind this? What can you you were involved, so what can you tell me? What do you remember about all this?
You are all incorrect, sir. It was not done for that reason. It was done for the opposite reason. Because at that, especially, and I can't remember where we were that night, but Raw was still playing the smaller buildings, as they say in the business. It wasn't, the 16, 18, 20,000 seat arena every Monday night that it became later on in the 90s. It was still a smaller building, so it was somewhere and probably in the Northeast. But the whole idea was there were still some smart fans, even if it wasn't in New York City or Philadelphia in the mid-90s. That obviously the Torch had a picture and the Observer had a report, which is exactly what they wanted. The smart fans knew when we were there taping syndicated television, 4 different shows, they can do the math from where we are in, on the calendar. And one of those shows at least had to air after WrestleMania. So if Yokozuna came out with the belt, or if Luger came out without the belt, you see where I'm going, and people will get the fucking message. So in the building, and this was done a number of times by Vince in the 80s. Dusty Crockett, we never taped television that far out. And Dusty, we only taped syndicated TV every 2 weeks and taped the TBS show every weekend. WWE or WWF, even, 80s, early 90s, was doing, as you'll recall, 4 or 5 weeks of syndication in one night. So they would have somewhere or another, I think they did this with the Steiners one night. I know they did it a few times in the 80s. They'd do something for the people in the building where fucking, maybe it was even dark. It wasn't even on a previous show, where maybe Luger and Yoko got in a dust up, or the champion and the challenger got in a dust up, and the challenger made off with the fucking belt, or the champion, if he was a heel, bailed out and ran and left the belt, and the challenger grabbed it or whatever. Then later on in the night, the fucking guy would come out with it because he still had it. The people saw him fucking steal it, right? The announcing him as WWF champion, as I recall also in the building, was done at Luger's insistence, right? To mock Yoko, or I was involved somehow where he's not the real champion. And they introduced him and they got the thing walking out or whatever, just to make the people wonder what the fuck's going to happen. So it was actually the opposite. Rather than getting ready and having footage already for something that was definitely going to happen, they were trying to make people question, well, is it or isn't it? 'Cause, well, yeah, that's how they covered it up. That's how Luger got the belt here tonight, but he's got it on TV, so I bet she's going to win. But they didn't know. So, but that's what, and that was done up there on a number of occasions, as I remember hearing.
So this specific instance, this was done purely to fool the smart fans and the newsletter readers?
Just to fucking, make them wonder what the fuck was going to happen. And if you'll notice, on the end of this clip, Luger drops the belt in the fucking ring.
He throws it at you.
That's right. He throws it at me, but he leaves it. He gives it back. That's what that. So that's it. That was never on television. That was just for the fucking people there. But at the same time, they're like, oh, that's how they got around it. Because the smart fans knew that's how they got around it the time before when it really did fucking change. And that's why the guy had the belt. But then the next time it didn't. So they didn't know. But yeah, that's been done on a number of occasions in the WWF, going back all the way to when Vince took over, where they would monkey with who had physical possession of the belt and who walked out with it. Or if a guy was going to lose a belt or tag team was going to lose belts at a big show, they would get them stolen or taken away or whatever the fuck earlier in the night in front of those people so they could come out later on without them, and it made sense. This is just the opposite of that.
You know, Vince really blew it with Luger. Obviously, he's not the greatest wrestler of all time, but I think there was a moment you could have done something with him. We've talked about the SummerSlam 93 finish and the big celebration for him not winning the belt. And then he went into the Ludwig Borga feud, which we could easily forget about.
I was about to, that's when you could tell Vince had given up. And that's what I'd actually said on an interview right before SummerSlam, where I said in pretty much these exact words, I said, Luger's going to look like a plate full of piss if he doesn't win, isn't he? And then I found out because I was sure he was going to win. And then I found out from Vince that he wasn't going to win. And then my mouth dropped open. And I said, and then I heard the finish. Oh, we're going to milk the chase until WrestleMania. I'm like, oh boy, I don't think there's that much milk left in this cow. But yeah, right there at SummerSlam, if he'd have beat Yoko, you could have got 6 probably good months out of package at that point, but you never got another good week out of him after that fucking finish. It was over. It was downhill from there.
Well, I hadn't watched any footage from this time period in a little while, so I'd forgotten that Lex Luger's theme song was Stars and Stripes Forever. And in 1994, I mean, there was a moment of real patriotic fan fervor for Lex Luger versus the dreaded Japanese Yokozuna because we were at war with Japan.
Well, no, actually, there was interest in 93, but by 94, there was less interest.
Yeah. But by 94, I have to say, him coming out to that music is such a mistake. And he used to have cool music in like WCW in 1989. Luger had the coolest music of anyone because you guys were using the bootleg Midnight Express music. And then he comes out to that. It's hard to. It's corny. It's cheesy. It's very Vince.
Yeah, it was very Vince-ish. But that's what that was, that clip. I saw that the other day, and that's the first time I thought of it and remembered it. But that's what they would do. They would just monkey with shit so the people knew there was TV being done over weeks of time. They wouldn't be completely sure of the outcomes. There would be a reason why that they saw a guy with or not with a championship belt on something that would obviously air after the big match.
When did Luger find out he wasn't getting the belt?
I don't know. But I can't imagine he was too happy after that whole fucking buildup. He was the most famous bus driver since Ralph Cramden. And all of a sudden it was the end of the line and they transferred to another station.
What did you think about the event at the Intrepid where he body slammed Yokozuna? They flew him in via helicopter as the surprise after various wrestlers and football players couldn't body slam him. That was right before you joined the WWF, but what did you think about that event?
Well, I didn't think anything of it until afterwards, because it was not only before I joined the WWF, it was before Bruce had called me. So I wasn't even watching. I knew it had happened because I read it in the Observer, right? But then after I got the call and I started going back and watching shit, and that's when I saw it. And it was a glorified hip toss. McMahon, that's all it was. It wasn't a full body slam. But yeah, I was not even watching their show, to be quite honest. Obviously not breaking my lifelong habit. And Bruce calls me up and says, hey, you guys want to make some shots? Okay, well, now I guess I got to fucking see what the shit looks like. And I had no idea about the Yoko thing until I showed up, as we've talked about ad nauseum. So I didn't do a lot of prep otherwise than to go in and know approximately where they put their cameras on their television program, and with the intent of trying to get the Heavenly Bodies over.
Where did you debut? Was it White Plains or Poughkeepsie?
Alexandria Bay, New York.
Oh, okay. Was that this? Because I'm remembering it looked like a very sweaty night.
Yeah,
But the other one, the one where you guys actually had the in-ring confrontation, you and Fuji and Yokozuna and Luger in his suit, and he's sweating through his suit. You can feel how hot it is just watching that. Where was that?
Oh, God, I'd have to get my 93 date book out because I don't fucking remember. The only reason I remembered Alexandria Bay is because I'd heard of a lot of places in New York, but I'd never heard of that. And when we were booked, they said, yeah, you'll do the first night is Raw in Alexandria Bay, New York. And I looked on the atlas. I'm like, what the fuck? We had to fly somewhere and then drive some more to get there. And when we pulled up, that's what I'm saying. In the first couple of years, Raw was not in the bigger buildings. There was White Plains Convention Center. There was a Poughkeepsie, the Mid-Hudson Civic Center up there. I love that Poughkeepsie was connected to the hotel we stayed in, and they had nice room service. So that was actually easy to work. You could eat, fucking sleep, and work in the same, not even go outside. But Alexandria Bay, we pull up, me and Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey, we pull up in the fucking rental car after coming all this way to wherever the hell this place was. And it was a big, like a tin-roofed hockey-type building. I would say rodeo arena, but I don't think they have rodeos up there, so it's probably hockey. But it was one of these goddamn rec centers. There was no air conditioning. It seated like probably 2,500, 3,000 people. It's jammed in, sweating like a fucking whore in church. And we all looked at each other like, this is the fucking WWF? This is Monday Night Raw? And I mean, they were still in some of those buildings for Raw back then in those days. So it was not an auspicious debut in terms of, hopefully they were more impressed with us than we were with their fucking facility that first night. Because it was, I don't know they ever ran that again for television at least.
Well, there's the answer everyone's been waiting for about why Lex Luger had the belt.
A burning question of why. I thought everybody knew that they used to do that back in those days.
I thought so too, and that's kind of what I presumed the answer would be, but again, I don't know why, but all of a sudden recently a lot of people have been asking this, and I guess it's because the video has gone around again.
Well, was that sneaky John Boucher that put that video? He has people's home movies. I don't know how it's like he broke into my wallet one time. He's got some shit that nobody should have.
I don't know how sneaky John Boucher is. He's a very fine gentleman. He
finds all this stuff. You don't know where he's getting it from. I think he's a cat burglar in his full-time work. Anyway.
He might be. He's in Queens.